Howdy. Today I wanted to go over the project and show you some examples. So first of all, everybody's doing the same thing for the project, and this is based on the semester-long case on Crystal Database Applications, the CDA case we've been talking about all semester. So everybody will be doing their interactive PowerPoint on this particular case. The learners are going to be a little bit different in focus. If you're an HRD major, your focus would be on the recruiters at CDA and the problems that they're facing. If you're a tech management major, your learners will be the technical implementation service staff and their problems. All of this training, all the PowerPoint is based on the objectives that were developed for the project. So you need to use those objectives. You also need to go back to your instructional strategy and use that as a guide as you go through the project. Although the instructional strategy isn't carved in stone, you can deviate from that. In fact, you should, because as you go to do your unit, you're going to think of other things that will be better or more interesting or more interactive or effective. So it's okay to deviate from your strategy. In fact, you really should. Okay? So with that, let's take a look at the checklist for the project. Okay, let me get that here real quick. So the checklist for the project you should be using as you go through the project. This is what we're going to use to grade your submission. So you need to make sure you're super familiar with this checklist and that you understand all the items on the checklist. We will be going over these items in our lab classes leading up to the due date for the project, but it's just critical that you use this checklist and become familiar with it. You're going to want to give your project to other people and have them use the checklist and go through it to make sure everything's okay. So it's broken down into parts. We have an intro, and I'll be going through each one of these with you here shortly. Then we have the content part. This is the actual training material. And then we have the mechanics, how this should be put together, how it should work. We have a post-test, and lastly, the ending. So please download the checklist. It's in the Canvas module, and please become familiar with it. Okay, so the first part of the project is the intro. This is where you'll be introducing your training to the learner. Okay, so you will be welcoming the learner, so you need a slide. This is an example of a slide welcoming the learner. It says what the course is, who it's for, the person's name. And also please note that there is an animated background. This is one of the requirements for your project. You need one of these somewhere. Okay, and you learned how to do that in the LinkedIn PowerPoint training. So if I go forward, okay, here's the second part of the welcome page. The first was the title page.
I'm Colin Christian.
Here's the welcome page,
where I'm currently working on a bachelor's in technology management with a business minor. I've graduated from Blinn College with an associate's degree, and I've created this training presentation for you so that you may understand how to dress appropriately and prepare for a professional interview once you've graduated from college.
Okay, so this is Colin's welcome slide. Okay, it meets all the requirements of the first item on the checklist. And also, please note that this is a different project than what we're doing. This is a project where the main instructional goal was to train graduating students at a community college. They were international students in how to get prepared for an interview. Like before you go to an interview, what are the things you need to do? Okay, so this will be different than the project you're doing. You're doing Crystal database applications. Okay, just wanted to make sure of that. Okay, so that's Collins. Then the second item is Gagne's Event 1, where we're going to grab the learner's attention. We need to have something that makes the learner really want to take our training and go, oh wow, I really am excited for this training. I want to take this training. So here's another example, and this one's Jacob. Let me see if I can get his.
Howdy, and today we're going to be doing
let's go through to his Gagne Event 1. Okay, so here is his slide, and what he's done, he's put in here a funny video. The funny video is going to get the learner's attention and sort of get them interested, more or less. But if you show a funny video, then the next requirement is that we need to explain how this ties in to the training. Okay, and you'll see here that he's now tying that into the training. He's done a little short video. It tells us how this ties in.
So I'm your instructor, Jacob Briggs, and I'm going to give you the perspective on the video that we just saw. So you just saw a video of a millennial interviewing for a job position, and you saw that she was not at all prepared for what she went into.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of Gagne Event 1. It could also be where you tell a story to the learner that ties into the training. Just something to really get their attention. Explain to them, why is this training important? How is this going to help you in your life and in your career? That would be an appropriate beginning. Okay, so that would be for the intro. So the intro, you're introducing your training, introducing yourself, and you are giving your event to get them excited about the training. Okay, so then if we go to content, and the first thing, it says the learner. So the training needs to be geared toward the learner as described in the case. So if your learner is the recruiters, you have to gear this training to that group of learners. If it's the implementation service staff, you need to gear it toward them. So you need to talk about this throughout the content. You need to address the learner. You need to talk about the problems that you're trying to solve for that learner. Okay, it's not just generic training that can apply to anyone. This is specific according to the objectives that were developed for the case. So make sure that you're including the learner, okay, when you do this. Okay, so the second thing in content is a summary zoom slide. And with the summary zoom slide feature, and you learned how to do this in the LinkedIn training, it allows the learner to click on it and go to that section, and after the section's done, it comes back to that slide. So it's a summary slide for your training, allowing the learner to navigate to whichever unit they want to go to. Okay, and here's another example. Let's look at Marco's example of his summary zoom. Here's Marco's summary zoom slide. You see this one is not, doesn't have images. It's not super fancy, but it does the job. Okay, so Marco has divided his objectives into 5 sections, which are here, plus his post-test. So if I go to professional appearance, see, it zooms in and then allows me to go there. Okay, this is the professional appearance section. so on and so forth. Okay? Here's how Jacob did his. Let's see. Jacob. Okay, so Jacob chose to use images. Okay.
Throughout this course, you will have the opportunity to navigate to the
He's
different
also
lessons
narrated
from this
his
menu.
slide,
Lesson
which
1
is
being
fine.
professional appearance. Lesson 2 being organization.
So let's say I go to this first one. You
In
see,
this lesson,
this
we'll
comes
be
up
going
with
over
some different
professional
pictures
appearance
here,
for an
gives the
interview.
learner some navigation.
Lesson 1 objectives are listed below.
So you kind of get the idea. So after the learner would finish that whole section, it would go back to this slide. Okay, and you have to have this set up. If you look here, you can see where lesson 1 is all this, then lesson 2. Okay, and how you can also check this is if you go to the slide sorter, you can see here how he has this set up. Here's the summary slide, here's lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and you can call these anything you want. He could have called it what he called it here, professional appearance. But this is fine, as long as we go here and it's divided into sections. Okay, so that's the summary zoom feature. Next we have navigation. So let's look at Colin again. Here's Colin's. So you need navigation instructions. Okay, and here's Colin's navigation instructions. Okay, and it's just simply to tell the learner how to navigate through the unit, because you're going to disable the arrow keys on the keyboard, so the learner can't use those. So we have to tell the learner to click on the buttons and how to navigate through. Okay, so that's a great example of that. Okay, then next we have where we're going to start the actual content for each one of our clusters. Okay, so we have a cluster of objectives. For each cluster, we need to do 5 things. Okay, and if you look at the checklist, you should be looking at the checklist. You can see we first have to communicate the objectives, then we give the content, we go through the content, and then within the content there has to be somewhere where the learner is interacting with the content. It's not meant to be passive, this is interactive. So the learner has to actually do something somewhere within your content for each of your cluster modules. Then we're going to have a practice assessment, and that practice assessment will then have feedback. So each of the clusters have to have those 5 elements. Okay, so let's go back to Jacob. Okay, so let's go back to Jacob. Let's put it back there. So Jacob has, let's see. Okay, so here are the objectives. Okay, and this is simply taking the objectives you clustered in your instructional strategy and communicating them to the learner. You can communicate them this way. You can have audio. He has 2 slides for all the objectives in this module. Okay, so objective. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. Here's how Marco did it. Let's see. Here's how Marco did it. Here's his objectives. Okay, so either one is fine, but before you go into the content, you have to communicate the objectives. Okay, and don't repeat the objectives in the content part. We've already done that here, so you don't need to then say, okay, here are the objectives, and then go in the content part and go objective 1.0 and repeat it. We don't need to do that. Just have them here at the beginning one time. Okay, then once we do that, then we do the content. So let's kind of go through Marco's a little bit. Here's his objectives. This is his content. Okay. Marco has used a lot of words, text, which is okay. However, you are required to have a lot of multimedia. So at some point, he's got to have some images and other things. But kind of just be mindful of that. Click on any of the 3 categories to see where and how the decoration is acceptable. Here's an interactive activity. Okay, I click on jewelry and a text box comes up, so on and so forth. Okay, so that meant the requirement for an interaction. Okay. Okay. So there he has an image as well. What's acceptable, what's unacceptable. Okay. Here's another interaction.
Yep.
So it's okay to wear that. Is it okay to wear a polo?
Nope.
Okay, so he's put some cute color feedback. He's put a fun little audio to that, which counts, again, as multimedia. So let's see how Jacob did that. Let's see. So this is basically the same content requirement. So here's his objectives. Okay. Okay, so
In this slide, we have an
and he's done a lot of narrating of his slides, which you don't
for example,
have
you see
to
that
do.
grooming has a very strong influence.
Here, let's.
The handshake.
Okay. Some narration's good, but you don't need to narrate every slide. It becomes kind of too much. Okay, so here is his slide, which is very visual. Okay, professional dress. Okay, he's made some good use of transitions right there, you can see. Here he has a YouTube video, which is one of the requirements of the project, is to embed a YouTube video. Okay, do's and don'ts. Okay, kind of get the idea. Here's his interactive activity. Select the individual to see if they are dressed appropriately. Okay, so and he has a explanation of why this isn't correct. I can return back here. He tells us why this one is correct. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. Okay, so that's content. So the content, you need to make sure that all the objectives in the cluster are covered by your content. Your content can't be entirely external content. Like, you have to have some original content here. It can't be all like web links to articles or videos. There has to be some content that you created here. Okay, the majority should be your content that you created. Okay, then we move to interactive learner activities during the content teaching. Here's an example. Let's see, let's go to Colin. Slide 10. Okay, so here's an example of an interactive activity within the content. So he's teaching the content here. He says, here's some great examples. Click to reveal. Okay, so I click it and I get some really nice images. And this is nice because so many people are visual learners, so this is super nice that I can click here, I get this visual, what's right, what's appropriate. And then he has poor examples, okay? And in your instructional strategy, you're going to talk about examples and non-examples. Here's a great example of examples and non-examples. These are things we don't want the learner to do, okay? Then let's look at Marco. We may have looked at this one briefly, but let's look again. Okay, so Marco. Yeah, we looked at that one. Okay, that was the jewelry one. Then let's look at another one of Marco's. I think it's on slide 25. Okay, so it says distinguishing important versus non-important. Click any of the information below to see if it's something of importance. Okay, and this is information you want your interview person to know about the company they're interviewing. Okay, so we can click on these. And see, this is causing the learner to be engaged. I can't just sit here and watch you tell me something. I'm actually, okay, yeah, that's important. How about culture? That's important. And then it comes up and says there's no such thing as non-important information about an organization. Okay, so that's a very interactive, kind of simple slide, but very interactive. Okay. Then the next item is practice assessment activity 1 for each cluster. If I go back to Colin here, let's see, let's go up to slide 21. Okay, so this is his practice activity. Select all 4 images of the correct choices to maintain a professional appearance. Okay, so this is done after he taught all the content. This is to let the learner practice to see if they learned the content or do they need to go back and review something. Okay, so let's try this. Is this one of them? See, and I'm getting, this is the feedback. This is the next item. Shorts are a poor choice. They don't look professional. Okay, if I choose that one, it turns green and I get a nice message. Yes, do that. So you kind of get the idea. So this is giving me automatic and immediate feedback. It's very visual. I think the use of the color is really nice. The use of the images. The feedback is really nice. And see, it's in red, so I know, oh my gosh, I shouldn't do this. So this is a great example. Okay, so we found all 4 of them. So this is a great example of a practice activity with feedback that's automatic and immediate. Okay, so that's really it for the content section. If you look at the checklist, follow the checklist, go through each cluster, do all 5 things for each cluster, tell the learner the objectives, teach the content, have an interactive activity within the content, do a practice item, and feedback for your practice item. Okay, so the next area then is mechanics. Okay, so this is how you put it together and the various features and things like that. Okay, so the first one is navigation buttons. Okay, and navigation buttons are very important because this allows the learner to move through the unit. If there's some point where the learner can't move through the unit, if the learner gets stuck somewhere and can't go forward, I'm assuming I'm the learner and I can't see any of your content after that point. So you're going to lose serious points if that happens. So navigation is critical in this unit. Okay, the first thing about navigation is we disable the arrow keys so the learner has to use the buttons. Okay, and we'll learn how to do that in the lab if you don't know how to do it. Also, don't time the buttons. I mean, sometimes it's good to do because that forces the learner to have to stay on a slide for a certain length of time, but it's very quirky in PowerPoint, and sometimes it causes some navigation glitches. So please don't time your buttons. Okay. The second thing is use of good design. And if we look at Collins, I think he has a great use of design. looking through some of his slides. Okay, kind of going back to the beginning. I think this is a great use of colors. The theme is carried on through his slides. Okay. This is his summary Zoom slide. So you can kind of get an idea of design, and we learned a lot about design in, the PowerPoint training. Okay. So navigation has to be clear and easy. Like I said, the learner cannot get stuck at any point. We need instructions for interaction. So if I have an interaction, which I think, he had an interaction where? Those examples. Okay, here's his interaction. You notice he has instructions. Select all 4 images. Okay, you just went, what if that wasn't there? The learner wouldn't know what to do. So please have instructions when you want the learner to do something. Otherwise, the learner's just sitting there not knowing where to click, what to do. Okay, so just have, and that's a simple point, but it's important. Some slides need to have audio. And if you have audio, make sure it plays automatically and you don't have to press a separate button. Okay, the learner shouldn't have to press a button to hear what you have to say. It should come on when the slide comes up, the audio should automatically play. Okay, and you don't need audio on every slide, but you need some audio somewhere. Okay, then animated background. That was what I showed you on Colin's slide here, and you need at least one of these. He did his at the beginning. He also has this slide at the end. Okay, effective use of interactive PowerPoint features. You need to use the features that we went through in training, like zoom, morph, animated slide background, click boxes, all those features that make PowerPoint 365 interactive, you need to be using and integrating throughout your unit. Use of multimedia. You need a good amount of multimedia, and by that I mean you need, if I go through Collins, for example, there's text, there's images, there's audio, there's video. I think at some point he may have, I'm trying to say a web link. Web links are multimedia, where you're giving the learner a link for further information. Okay, and I don't know that he did that, but that would count as one. Okay, so just a good deal of that. I don't want to slide mainly with just a bunch of text, okay, because that's not really engaging and interesting to learners. Think of yourself when you go through a presentation. You don't really like to see a lot of text. You don't want the instructor reading the slide to you. Okay, so keep all those things in mind as you go through this. Then there has to be a video of you as the instructor. Let's go to, let's see, I was going to go to Marco's. I have so many things up here. Okay, go slide 26. Oh. Okay, so this is something neat you can do. Marco did a screen capture in Camtasia, like a picture-in-picture, and this is a great way to teach the content and also do your video. Okay, so I have that turned down. But
researching a company through its official website. So right now I'm looking through NASA's, and the first thing you want to look for is the About Us section. So right now I'm looking about NASA. Perfect.
Okay, so that's a great way to do your video, and that counts as multimedia, okay, as well. It's a great piece of multimedia. So you might want to consider that. Consider teaching the learner something using a screen capture in Camtasia. Okay, so that would be good. Colin, let's see what Colin did. Okay, Colin did something that was really unique, and I really liked it. He used a green screen when he did his video. So let's kind of see what happens
Hi.
here.
In today's video, I'm going to be discussing professional padfolios and where to get them. First, let's start with the obvious. A quick Google search can lead to thousands of results, but let's try and narrow it down just a bit. I've chosen 3 different stores that you can go to find a professional padfolio for that dream
Okay, so this was pretty advanced, but hey, if you want to try this, that would be great. So what he did was a screen capture using Camtasia, where he went through how to find the padfolio, and then he also separately did his video where he narrated that, and he used a green screen to project the image, kind of like the weather people do. So that was pretty cool. But it will also qualify if you just, have you talking, but I need to see you telling me something for at least a minute. So it's not like a big deal. It's a minute. It can't be your bio video can't work here. You can't use that. You can't have like a video here for 20 seconds and a video here for 20 seconds. It has to be at least one continuous video somewhere for at least a minute. Okay, and that will qualify for the video. Okay, then you have to embed a YouTube video, and I think that there are several examples of YouTube videos. I believe here's one. So we get that idea. So your video needs to be embedded. It needs to, and not linked. So you can't just put the link to YouTube here. You have to embed it into your PowerPoint. And here again, that's something we'll go over when we do labs. Okay, then the next thing is naming the file. Please name your file with your last name, first name, and so on in the instructions, okay? Okay, so that's it for the mechanics. Okay, so all those things have to be integrated and done. Then we have the post-test. So the post-test is meant to be at the end after the learner has gone through all the content. Now we want to test them to see if they learned your content. You don't need to have feedback for this, and it has to cover all the objectives. So there's 21 objectives. I think you could probably cover that in 10 to 15 questions. These can be multiple choice questions. These can be the questions you develop during your assessment deliverable. Okay, and I think, here's Emily. Okay, we haven't looked at hers much, but she has, on slide 120, is her final assessment. Okay, so if I go here, final assessment. Okay, so she's post-test question. See, it doesn't give me feedback. I just go through the questions. Okay, she has 7, but you're probably going to need more to cover the number of objectives we have in this case. Okay, you've completed your training course, go ace your interview. Okay, so that's the post-test. Then we have wrapping up the training, the ending. Okay, if I go back to Collins for an example. Okay, if we go down to the end. Okay, here's after the learner does the post-test, this comes up. You've completed the training. We're telling the learner, good luck and all that. So we're wrapping up the training. Then we have the ending slide. Well, he has a little animation there. Okay, this is another animated screen, which is great. And then we come back to the ending slide, which is the same as your beginning slide. Okay, so that's the whole presentation showing you a couple different examples. Let me go back here. I wanted to show you something really important. Okay, so using the checklist, this is how this will be graded. Please note that some things, if you miss them, are really going to count for a lot of points. Okay, the total thing's 500. Okay, but especially look at the top. If buttons do not work correctly and a learner would not be able to get to later content, no credit will be given for later content. Okay, so that means that if your navigation doesn't work right and I get stuck somewhere, anything after that I'm not going to grade. You could have a great video and a YouTube and all kinds of stuff after that, but if I can't get to it, I'm not going to grade it. So you're going to lose serious points depending upon where this happens. This is why you have to test it, you have to retest it, you have to have several people test it to make sure that your buttons work and don't get caught up somewhere. Okay, that's the most important thing. The next important thing that would count for a lot of points is the summary zoom slide. If you don't do the summary zoom slide, that's an automatic 50 points off. Okay, please don't use smart art. Please don't use other sorts of images or things. It has to be the summary zoom feature. And we will show you how to do that in class and we'll help you do it. So there's no reason we all shouldn't get that. But please note, that's a big one. The next big one is the navigation buttons. If you don't disable the arrow keys, that's 50 points. And to be honest, that's clicking a box and it takes like 5 seconds. So if you don't do it, that's pretty serious. If you don't meet the requirements for the video of you as the instructor, that's 50 points. Okay, and this is a minute video somewhere. Okay, so that's not huge. But if you don't do it, it's 50 points. Embedding a YouTube video, if you don't do that, that's 50 points. So those are the big things. I mean, you'll lose points maybe, 20 points not enough multimedia, or maybe you didn't have instructions somewhere, or maybe you didn't have enough content. So you'll lose points for those things, but these are the main big things that you will lose major points for. So I know this has been a really long video, but I hope you find it helpful when you go to do your project. Please come to the labs, please ask questions. Try to be creative and try to make it a little fun too. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be creative and be able to put something together that's really interesting, and you can use it to show employers. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thanks.